Thank you very much, Karin, and I think there was a great alliance in the program. This panel, before I was invited here, already cried out for new methods for policy making, isn't it? We heard the director of Hartel Steyr asking for participation, involve us in policy making. So this is perfect for my next 10 minutes. And also what Bicke said, she said we need a reality check, and she didn't know that exactly this thing was done in the last half year in Austria. So we did a reality check with users, with teachers, and all other different parts of society. But first of all, before I start, what do public opinion tell us? Is it just about opinion? I hear bias a little bit in the header here, because people in society, they have opinions, but they have also a lot of experience, and with that, a lot of knowledge, which is currently untapped, oftentimes, when we develop policy measures. So I speak here about a project we did together with the Federal Ministry of Digital and Economic Affairs. They were brave enough to exercise a new method, a new open innovation method. So we heard a lot, I think also yesterday, that currently VET is challenged, and with that the broader society is challenged in multiple ways. I don't want to go time-wise into this so much, but we see clearly here at the right hand that customers, consumers have new power roles across all sectors. So users, being it business users, being it customers, consumers, have new power roles in all sectors. They are empowered by information, by tools, but this means that we also have to change the way how we develop policies. This is a big cultural shift. But it's necessary if we want to be ahead of the curve. Ahead of the curve in the sense that you, as a policymaker, you develop really measures which are accepted by society and not neglected. So we want to be this fish, the yellow fish, isn't it? So what do we need to change? I think before we develop new measures, it's very valid, and the time is ripe to ask open questions. We often do empiric studies where we ask closed questions. So when you ask closed questions, you know already something you want to get out, isn't it? But if you ask open questions, you are open for gaining new knowledge. You dig much deeper. And it's very important when you do these innovative policy developments that you look out for people who have the right knowledge in society in order to answer your questions. So it's not about involving everyone, it's about doing purposeful strategies to look who could help me here. Is it a teacher? I am looking for apprentices who are right in the middle of their education, probably have a different value set. So this goes back to open innovation, which was invented already in the academic world 15, 20 years ago. And it says that if you go across boundaries of sectors, discipline, and so on, you are much more successful in innovation processes. So what you develop finally as a new solution can have more success in the application later on if you open up early on and don't develop new solutions in silos, so meaning within politics, within companies. So it's about the blurred boundaries we are seeing more and more in our societies. If you have method and use them to step across these boundaries, you will be much more successful in innovation. So in policy development, look at the right side here, this means that if we open up these processes of policy development, we can really be much better as solution providers. The solutions might be more easily accepted by the target groups. And thirdly, there's a better legitimation for new policies, because the process already was somehow, not all of it, but somehow at distinct points open. So what we did together with the Ministry of Digital and Economic Affairs was that we say we want to do a check, a reality check in certain questions. And the two questions I want to address here was, is it possible to interlink the two silos of apprenticeship, dual education, and university education? Is it possible to interlink this much more? Currently very separated. And how could this be? What are the barriers? And secondly, how do we increase the mobility in Europe? These two questions were targeted here. And we decided not to do a huge crowdsourcing online, but to do really a series of co-creation workshops with people from the fields knowing exactly what they are talking about. And with the results out of this, and we are still working on this towards the end, development of a strategy paper. And we brought together in these interactive workshops 4 groups, people from education, practitioners from education, very much people from the ground. From the corporate world, we had in the workshops apprentices being very young, 15, 16, and said, wow, I'm invited to a policy development workshop. I couldn't believe it. We had their supervisors from companies. So we had a very different set of people working on these quite difficult questions. Of course, we have had people from society, for instance, NGOs in the field of VET, and policymakers. And here you get an impression what was going on in the workshop. So we worked really intensively, 6-7 hours in each workshop with approximately 20 to 25 people, being very well informed ahead of the workshop what is the question we are tackling, and being carefully selected. And they really bottom up, they worked bottom up, and we collected what are the main barriers in the fields we are tackling. And the key challenges here you see on the left side, on the right side, we really enabled them to develop suggestions for new policy measures. You see here also they played around with Lego in order to get an imagination about the complex solutions we might need in the future. And what we saw, that there's really a hunger for being invited into policy development. So we approached, you see that at the left side, 225 experts, and I call users also experts here. And more than a quarter of them said immediately, yes, I want to be involved. So it's not difficult for a ministry to get these people. A lot of people are waiting for that. So there was a very high interest, a high willingness to participate, to spend time without getting paid in order to help here for the bigger good. The results. So the one big thing was, how can we really entangle dual and tertiary education? So in the really most strange case, this was the question, what would motivate a university student to do an apprenticeship? And this might be necessary in a lot of cases, and we found people who did that, and vice versa. What is needed for an apprentice to go and march up the ranks to university? And we heard yesterday from the Minister of Education that this is quite a small percentage who does it. So the barriers are quite difficult. And the participants confirmed very much that this is a topic for a lot of people, that we should break down the silos here. And it's about lack of knowledge. It's also lack of comparability of theoretical knowledge and practical skills. And also the educational pathways are not adjusted to the current and future needs of users but also the economy. We heard that also, I think, also in the panel discussion this morning. And we need more user-oriented support mechanism. So one idea they had then in the afternoon was really to install a kind of virtual or even physical VET center for educational and vocational passes in Austria. And the dream, some of these participants even was there would be a network of such centers throughout Europe. Because there's a huge gap in the information, so people don't know enough. There was also a kind of demand for really user-oriented support mechanism, because a lot of adults would be willing to go into a complete new educational pathway, to even do an apprenticeship, but the financial risks, also the duties of care they have, yeah, there are a lot of barriers to do that if you're an older person. And so here was a clear idea to provide them with much better support mechanism. The second area, fostering mobility in Europe. I think you know the challenges quite well. I want to go to two selected measures. We developed a lot of measures, but I want to show just two of them. There was also confirmation that a lot of the currently existing European transparency instruments are not known. Even by these, heavy users out there, they are not known, they are not used. Probability their usability is not good enough. It could be also a communication effort, and it needs a quantitative but also a qualitative evaluation of these measurements and instruments. What really was a very funny discussions we had, that a lot of people said, the qualification of people is now evaluated differently by employers. And oftentimes you have several days long assessment centers, or you want to get to know a person you are hiring from another country quite ahead. And so this idea of very short EU traineeships was born, that it should be possible to work in another country for a few days or a week without a lot of bureaucratic burden. This could really help very much to have much more mobility on the European level, because the employers are afraid of the paperwork. If you hire someone not knowing if he is exactly the right person, and on the other side, the applicants are not sure if it's worth to make the effort to set up a new living in another city, for instance. Yeah? So these short traineeships could help very much to go over this barrier. This was for a little aperitif, yeah, about our study. Thank you very much.